My name is Enoch, son of Jared, of the line of Seth, who was the son of Adam. Since I was a child, I've heard the stories of our fathers, stories of how the Almighty God formed Adam from the dust of the earth, how the beautiful Garden of Eden was once open to us, how sin, a single act of disobedience, slammed its gates shut forever. Each generation passed down this unshakable truth. Man is born, man lives, and inevitably, man dies. Witnessed this cycle with my own eyes over and over again. Adam, the first man, lived an incredible 930 years, and then he died. His son Seth lived 912 years, and then he too died. Enoch, Kenan, Mahalo, and even my own father, Jared, they each walked their long, winding road, but all arrived at the very same destination: death. I accepted this as the undeniable destiny for all flesh. There was no alternative, no other path to take. Then, when I was 65 years old, a profound change occurred in my life. My son was born. I named him Methuselah. As I held this tiny, fragile life in my arms, I felt the immense weight and preciousness of existence in a way I never had before. The world outside our home was growing louder, filled with the clamor of human pride and escalating violence. But in the midst of that noise, a quiet, persistent hunger began to grow in my heart. I yearned to know the God of our fathers, not just as a figure in ancient stories, but as a living, breathing presence in my own life. From that year forward, something inside me shifted. The scriptures would later describe this transformation with a few simple words. Enoch walked with God. But for me, it wasn't a single dramatic event. It was a daily, conscious choice. A continuous turning of my heart toward Him. I began to speak to the Lord not with formal, distant prayers, but as one speaks to a trusted and beloved companion. Out in the fields, as the sun rose and cast its golden light over the land, I would talk to Him. In the profound stillness of the night, under a blanket of stars, I learned not just to speak, but to listen for His gentle voice. This became my new reality. Walking with God in a world that was becoming increasingly noisy and distracted. Life for everyone else continued its usual course. Children were born and grew up. Men built cities, traded goods, argued, and slowly, they forgot to fear the Lord. So many chased after their own fame, their own strength, building legacies they thought would last. But I felt a different calling, a pull toward something eternal. To walk with God meant choosing His voice over the deafening roar of the crowd. It meant standing for justice when others embraced cruelty. It meant speaking truth when deception was easier and more convenient. It meant choosing humility when everyone else was boasting about their achievements. For 300 years, my life continued in this way. These were years filled with the ordinary labors of life. I had other sons and daughters. I loved and provided for my family. I tended my flocks, and I lived among my people. To an outsider, I was just another man, living a simple life. But inwardly, my every step was synchronized with the rhythm of another kingdom, a heavenly one. There were mornings when the presence of the Lord felt closer to me than my own breath, more real than the ground beneath my feet. I would gaze at the majestic mountains and know with absolute certainty that they were the work of His powerful hands. I would watch my son Methuselah grow from a boy into a man and understand that every single life is a precious gift, not something we are entitled to. In my quiet moments of fellowship with God, I often wondered, would the Holy One remain distant from mankind forever? Was the gate to Eden truly closed for all time, with no hope of return? Yet the more I walked with Him, the more I sensed His deep and abiding mercy still at work, a gentle current moving beneath the surface of the world. He had not abandoned us. I lived for 365 years in total, a lifespan much shorter than my father's before me. As my time grew, people likely expected my end to be just like theirs, a period of sickness, a final silence, and a grave dug beside the generations that came before. But the Lord, my constant companion, had written a different chapter for my story. I cannot describe my departure in the way others describe death because I did not taste it. There was no final, painful breath. One day, just as I had done thousands of times before, I was walking with God, and in an instant, The veil between heaven and earth simply faded away. The distance was gone. There was no fear. There was no shadow of the grave. There was only the warm, familiar voice that I had followed all my life, the voice that had become my guide and my comfort, saying, "Come." And then I was no longer among men, for God took me. Let those who hear my story understand this one crucial truth. A person's life is not measured by the number of their days, but by the quality of the steps they take with God. My fathers lived for many more years than I did, accumulating centuries on this earth. Yet of me, only one thing was truly worth recording, that I walked faithfully with the Lord. And that, I discovered, was more than enough. It was everything.
Thanks for listening.
Don't forget to follow 4 more stories from the Annals of Time.